I'm in San Diego for the American Library Association.
Oh, really?
Conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, my publisher sent me there. They wanted to send me to San Diego Comic-Con to do a panel, and I said, why do a panel for 10 people when I can be in front of every librarian in the country that definitely wants middle grade books about role-playing games? So I'm at the ALA, I'm at the Marriott Grand Marquis, and the conference is at the San Diego Convention Center, which is bizarre because when you're in San Diego at the Convention Center and the Marriott and it's not Comic-Con, it's, you're running up and down the Gaslamp District going, I can get us a table at any of these restaurants. There's literally no wait.
We can eat here, we can eat there, we can eat there. It's like Nirvana.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics
and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of the Webcomics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and the co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Scott, let's talk comics.
Yeah, it's not Dave, it's Scott Kurtz. Dave is recovering from the real San Diego Comic-Con, the show I was too afraid to attend.
And it sounds like he had a really good show. The big question was whether they were going to have as good of a show as they had last year when Hall H was kind of closed down and everybody had tremendous sales. And from what I hear, I think he's going to come back and talk about it in an upcoming episode, but he did really well. He didn't quite hit that same mark that he hit last year, but sounds like it came pretty darn close. So it was a good show for him. But right now he's dealing with some home repair things that's happened in the meantime. So between being absolutely, you know how it is the first week back from San Diego, you're exhausted. And between that and the stuff that's going around the house, I offered to call our good friend Scott in to pinch hit for a show. We're going to give Dave a little bit of a rest, and we're going to do just our regular comic show. Scott, you've been doing this stuff long enough. I knew you could come right in and hit the ground running.
I am a seasoned podcast professional, Brad. Not only that, I'm an accomplished podcast guest. So I run the gamut.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I was thinking about this. You may be the most often. I think you have the highest guest count in terms of the highest number of appearances
on Comic Lab.
For Comic Lab. Yeah. You've been back more than I think anybody else at this point.
Wow.
What is it up to now that Steve Martin and some of those folks have guest hosted Saturday Night Live? They call it
the Five Times Club.
Is it the Five Timers Club, the Six Timer Clubs? So I don't know whether it's quite as prestigious as that, but it's we might have to have jackets made. I do like the idea of jackets.
I do too.
So here's the deal. We've got a couple questions that some of our Patreon backers have sent in that I thought we've been kind of holding on to them. And I thought you would be really, really well equipped to talk about a couple of these questions. And particularly the first one that I'm going to pitch to you right now. And it has to do with this. We have somebody wrote in that basically just said, and I love these open-ended questions. How do you write a graphic novel? Like, could you take us through your process from ideation to writing, and take us through how you actually get this thing ready for publishing?
This is a very excellent question, even as open as it is. And the reason why they asked it that way is because there's just not a lot of information out there about it. So I'm happy to tell you what my process is. So for 25 years, when it came to the way that I wrote graphic novels, was I just made it up one page at a time every day as I went. And then after enough days had passed that I had enough to collect into a book, that's what I did. And
it sounds very familiar.
Right. And what's interesting is now that I've done it differently, I see the negative impacts that doing it that way can have on your story. I see some benefits as well, but regardless, the way that it works now is what I do is I sit down and I've only done this twice now officially, so bear with me. But what I do is I have a basic kind of idea of what the story is going to be. And, I don't have all the moving parts. I have kind of an idea of an opening and a destination. And so really conquering the blank page, what you do is you don't worry so much about getting it right immediately. That's the first thing you've got to overcome.
Yeah.
Writing is rewriting, is what they say. And the reason for that is that you've got to get through your script and then look at it and then decide how you're going to edit. And the only way to do that is to finish it. So you've got to employ whatever tricks you have to get through it. And one of the things that I've done, and one of the things I highly, highly recommend, and I'm jumping the gun a bit, but when you're writing your script and you're stuck, you know where you are, you know where you want to get, but you're not sure how you're going to get there. I would write on my script SSH and then just move to where I'm supposed to go. And SSH stands, I actually turned in a script one time and forgot to remove the SSHs. And I had the guy drawing it say, "What is this SSH?" Every once in a while in the script, I go, "Oh, that stands for something stupid happens." And the reason why is I knew where I was. I knew where I wanted to get. I didn't know how to get there, but I didn't want to stop. So I was like, okay, we're here. Something stupid happens, and then we're there. And now I can keep writing. And I'll go back later and fill in the something stupid happens part. And the reason why I suggest doing that is that what you'll find miraculously is once you jump past it and just say, I'll worry about that later, when you come back to it, you're going to find you have an easier time filling that in. What I do is something called the snowflake method has worked really well for me. I write a pitch, like a 1-sentence pitch for my story, like kind of like your elevator pitch, and just make it 1 sentence. Then you turn that sentence into a paragraph. You expand it. You say, okay, now I know what my story is when I'm elevator pitching it. Now I have a little more space. I'm going to turn this sentence into a paragraph. Then you go in and you say, okay, this paragraph is like 4 sentences long. Now I'm going to turn each one of these sentences into a paragraph. And you just fractally expand it out like that. That's how you'll get your outline. Yeah.
Wow.
And then
I've never heard of that.
What I do is I turn my outline in. Yeah. It's a really good way to kind of get past when you sit with your outline and you kind of go, oh, I don't know. You'll start your outline, you'll start writing it down, and then you'll get stuck. But I really like the snowflake method. It really kind of gets you out of your head, and it gives you a task, right? Like, all right, turn this sentence into a paragraph, and you just keep expanding that out. And then some stuff you'll get rid of, some stuff you'll say you don't need, but that usually leads to an outline for me. And the only reason that I do it that way is because my editor requests an outline. And so this is the first time I've ever done this at all. I've never written a story all the way through from beginning to end first before I started drawing it. And I've been doing this for 2.5 decades.
Yeah.
I'd never done it before. Mm-hmm. So, the outline was really important because your editor or your agent was going to want to see it. That's what prompted me to do it. Okay, so now that you have the outline, you have to write the full script. So what I do is another way to write an outline is I like thinking in scenes, kind of like in a movie. Like in this scene, these things are going to happen, and then the next scene, that's going to happen. A tip I learned from a TikTok featuring the South Park creators, what is it, Trey Parker and Matt Stone? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, you got it exactly. Yep, I know exactly where you're going. I use this in my class all the time because it really hits with people.
Good. Yeah, they say when you're looking at your story beats, if it says this happens, then What, then that happens, that's wrong.
And then, yep.
Yeah.
If you can put "and" in between your story beats, then that's not great storytelling. Yeah.
But if you say this happens, so that happens, but then this happens, so then that happens, then the story has impact because one scene is causing the other scene to happen and it's connected.
Yeah, there's a cause and effect relationship between all of your story beats. If one thing has a cause and effect relationship to the next, then that's compelling. But and if not, then you're literally just making a grocery list. This and then that, and then this and then that.
Yeah,
and
it's a list. It's not a story. Right.
Yeah.
So the next thing I do is I just start writing the script, and I'll start at page 1. And when I do a comic script, I just, page 1, panel 1, and I try to write about, for a kid's book, about 5-6 panels per page at max. And then you just kind of go and see how it fills out. I don't really know another way to do it. I only write them out like that ahead of time because I'm required to. I think if I wasn't required to, I would probably do it on the fly as I was drawing pages. But I really do find taking the time to do it all first helps. Another tip that's not practical, but I think is wonderful. I heard from Taika Waititi in an interview. He'll write a script and then put it away for a year.
Yes.
Which is not practical.
A whole year?
Well, he said a whole year, yeah.
No, but time. We got to talk about that because people, this is a common thing on the show. People do not want to give that time element the effect that it has, even if it's putting it away for 3 days or a week and then coming back to it and looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. You'd be amazed how all of a sudden this joke or this storyline that made perfect sense doesn't hold anything anymore. And you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, what he does is he puts it away for a set amount of time, and then he'll come back to it after that time and read it through all the way through, and then set it aside and start over from scratch and rewrite it. Only based on what he remembers reading, and what he finds is at the end, he has a really tight script because the stuff that didn't impact him, he doesn't remember to put in there. So that's another tip.
Yeah. Now, talk about working with an editor.
Oh, working with an editor is wonderful. Now, I love it.
Yeah.
I spent 25 years just doing it on my own, but I also had a key group of friends that I could call up and bounce jokes off of. Brad, you and I do that all the time.
Yeah.
So having an editor is really great because they're, especially if they have a good editor like I do, they're really, really good at being a second and third set of eyes because they have assistants that look at it too and other editors that look at it too. But they'll come back and they'll challenge you on some things. They'll say, well, I don't know if this character would do that, or maybe we should, one of the things that's really helped me with the editors, they've helped me navigate things in the publishing world that just don't really go over well in kid lit that I never thought about. In the book I'm working on now, the characters at a camp. And I wrote a whole scene where some of the older kids take the younger kids on a snipe hunt. And I thought it was a really, really funny scene, but they were like, this is mean. This is too mean. And looking back on it now, it was really mean, but that's what a snipe hunt is. It's a prank. And I didn't have a reason for it to be in there.
And there's also, you and I grew up in the 70s or our formative years. And it was, it's not to say this isn't, young people are snowflakes things, but we had a different cultural experience where some of that stuff was accepted, even when maybe it shouldn't have been accepted. And now we have a different cultural conversation where it's like, no, that's a mean thing to do to somebody.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say I'm not a big all these kids are snowflakes kind of guy either. But I will say that I find it fascinating. Social sciences are a science too. And, so many people get offended by things that are happening in culture. And I don't think enough people will go, well, that's interesting. Because a lot of the things that are happening in our culture that are different than when we were growing up, like Neil deGrasse Tyson says, it is something happening in culture right now. So, if that's, if you want to, explore that, give that over to the social scientists. But yeah, when we were growing up, there were things that maybe were better and things that maybe were worse. But nobody was overly concerned about our feelings when we were growing up.
So let me ask you, I'm going to be honest for a second, just kind of at the risk of making myself sound like a jerk. I know, me being who I am, I'd have a hard time when an editor told me this part of the story isn't working out. Because I bristle when somebody tries to come into my creative process to my own detriment sometimes. Because you and I both spent a lot of times winging it, doing it on our own, making our own decisions. And now all of a sudden you've got even the snipe hunt thing, which, by the way, was probably the right call for your book. Is there ever a time that you bristle a little bit at having somebody inject themselves into your creative process?
Here's the interesting thing. One of the first things I did when I got this gig was I went on Twitter and entered book talk, kidlit, not talk. Well, yeah, I did it on TikTok too, but I went on social media and I started following people in this industry, people that I have seen their books and really was impressed with their books, and editors and stuff. And all the editors and people in publishing were upset because they're not getting paid for the work they're doing. Also, the editors aren't getting the respect they deserve, because I think, and Corey used to complain about this too. People come up and they'll say things like, I bet you wish you made books, and didn't just like edit them. Well, yeah, they're making books. They're writing books. They're very accomplished writers. And thank God they decided they want to edit, because they help us be a lot better. Yeah, everyone on social media that was someone in my position making a book, they were so negative. It was like, well, the advances aren't enough to make a living off of, and the work is so much that you can't do anything else to make money. And so if you're not, independently wealthy, or you don't have a trust fund, I guess you just can't make books in the publishing world. And I'm in that boat. The advance isn't enough to live off of. My wife's working. I'm trying to make ends meet. I'm finding creative ways to get through this marathon, because making kids' books is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to get to book 3, book 4 before things start earning out. And I think maybe just because I was born in 1971 and not born in 2004, I just figured that's part of the game. That's just the way that it is. And it's time to, suck it up and just do it. Like, what are you going to do? Not do it? Right. So,
yeah.
That's the first time in a long time that I've been like, you snowflakes, just pull up your freaking sleeves and get to work. Like, what do you want? You want it on a platter? You got to earn it. If anyone could do it, anyone would do it. It's only for us, the special few, the proud, the cartoonists who can do this. What are you drinking? Vinegar. Have a sip, you wimp. Is that vodka? That's apple cider vinegar. I'm not even enjoying it or getting any nutritional value. I'm on page 98 of 200. Suck it up. We have children to entertain. Oh my God. Anyway, to answer your question,
what are you drinking? Vinegar may have been my favorite line of the entire thing. That I'm stealing that.
Editors are the best.
Oh, good. Yeah. And so
now
you come back from the editing process.
What are you doing? Are you doing hand gestures? What am I supposed to glean from that? I don't know ASL.
Oh, you still can't hear me. Oh my God. There's
a chat box right over there, you dipshit. Type it out.
Oh.
See over to the right where it says people and then chat?
I'm looking for for it.
You've never seen that in your life?
Mine.
Studio chat.
Mine is different than yours. Mine is different than yours.
Hey, editor, I don't know what your name is, but I'm assuming you're younger than us. Look at this old man trying to figure out how Riverside works. Can you believe that he's your boss and you're not his boss? Oh, to answer Brad's question, I do get all bristled up sometimes on certain things. And here's the really challenging thing is that my editor came back one time. I had a scene in the first book where I did one of those pause panels where nothing happens in one of the panels to give you the timing. And the note that came back was like, oh, this pause, there's this awkward pause here. You should have her come in right there and say it instead of waiting a panel. And I was like, what? And it was like, I was also getting notes where if you're in a panel and a word balloon is pointing off panel, right? And because you're not putting that character that's talking in that panel because you want to break up the look of it. But through the context of reading it, you know who's speaking because there's only two people in the scene. And the note was, well, who's talking here? You know, you're not showing who's talking.
Yeah.
And so I said to my wife, like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to change this. And she's like, well, just explain it. And I said, but I'm a man and my editor is a woman. And now I'm like, kitten, you see in comics, this is how this works. Like, it just feels like I'm mansplaining to her and I don't want to mansplain. Yeah. But and she's like, but maybe she doesn't understand the language of comics. I'm like, yeah, she's an editor. She understands the language of comics. I can't assume that she doesn't. How many of these has she published? Yeah. What do I do? I guess I'm just changing it. So I just changed it because I didn't want to mansplain to my editor. But so I'm learning. I can change. I can grow as a person. I can make the sacrifices to be a better person. But yeah, every once in a while, and I've had other authors tell me, now when the editor comes back with a note you don't like, it's your book. You know, you don't have to change it. No, it's your book. And so what I've learned is when a note comes back that I really disagree with, if I really believe in the scene, I'll find a way to get in there either in a different way or I'll just accidentally miss the note and draw it anyway. And then when they go, hey, you drew this scene in there, I'm like, oh, I missed that note. Because the comments of the script, I didn't have it on. The day I was drawing that, I didn't have the comments on. I missed it or I skipped it. Sorry. Do you want me to take it out? Yeah. Like, no, it's fine. And that takes a long time and it eats. This is the crappy thing they don't tell you. When you're editing your book, you're sending it to an editor and a group of other editors and assistants that help them to read it and have a discussion and make some notes and send it back. And that takes time and that eats into your drawing time and that you don't get that back. So yeah. And then they'll send you back your script with comments on the side and then you'll rewrite it. I've only done one full edit per book so far. I don't know if that's normal or just the way that we've worked together, that they've liked it. But I have noticed the one thing that's different is when I go to write it, when I go to make the page and I find a better way to arrange the panels and the dialogue, or I change dialogue a little bit, I tweak it as I'm putting the page down. When I turn that page in, I'll get back, this is different than the script. You didn't ask me about this change. And I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that response. Here's the weird thing about my editor, and this is just personal to me, is for some reason, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm kind of considered a veteran. And so when people talk to me about stuff, I'm not always nervous because, I've been around the block. Yeah. But when I'm talking to my agent or when I'm talking to my editor, I'm like a 5-year-old that just wants them to like me so bad. And I'm so afraid to disappoint them. And I don't know why that is, but I get real nervous when I talk to my editor. And like, if she likes something, I'm like, yay. And if she's like, no, I don't know about that, I'm like, So
Yeah.
my favorite things when I get back notes is when she'll put a comment that isn't a change, but just a reaction. Like it'll be like, ha ha ha, or aw. And I'm like, yeah, she liked it. Oh, senpai noticed me.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
All right, folks. So listen, in case you couldn't tell, we were having a little bit of problem with our new podcast recording system, Riverside FM. Literally at near the end, Scott couldn't hear me at all. And we just kind of asked him to kind of monologue his way through the question. So we've switched over to Zoom. That's going to explain any, hopefully, a minor audio difference that you hear on the second half of the show. And we're going to go on with another question that we had that I've been literally saving for when we had a guest like Scott on the show, where I knew you could take this ball and run with it for days. Here's the question. I love it when you guys talk about the early days of webcomics. Can you share some of your stories about those times? So we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. The web is in its nascent period, and Scott Kurtz realizes I can put comics on the web and reach my audience directly. Let's talk about some of those early days of webcomics.
Oh, man. I mean, the funny thing is we didn't know they were the early days of webcomics.
No.
Yeah, we had no clue. We were just flying by the seat of our pants. And, you know, what's interesting is, I mean, I look back now and I always had the attitude that it was all real.
Yeah.
But that's kind of been a kind of a through line of my whole life. Because when you're growing up and you tell everybody you want to be a cartoonist, they think it's cute. But when you get to be in high school and college, you know, people start saying you should have a plan B. But yeah, most of us never really believed in a plan B. No. And I think it's just kind of part and parcel with what we do, is believing that it's real, knowing that it's real, and that we're going to do it whether it works out or not. So that's kind of what it felt like. But it was really an exciting time, and also kind of scary. It came right after, right before the .com boom and crash.
Yes. Like minutes before.
Right.
It was so close.
Yeah. One of the things that really helped us in the beginning was that .com boom, was everyone excited about websites, having a .com, having your own website, and that this could be a new business. And I don't know what got you online with your comics, but mine was that I found a group of cartoonists that were traditional publishing cartoonists. They did gag comics for magazines. They were syndicated. They were on a web ring called CAL, Cartoonists at Large.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was a board, a forum called the Weisenheimer.
Yeah.
For cartoonists. And a lot of those cartoonists were making websites. And the reason why they were making websites was it was a new way for them to reach editors and sell their stuff, sell their comics. So there was a cartoonist named Ted Goff who did single panel gag strips for magazines, and he had his whole thing online. Randy Glasbergen. A lot of illustrators. And so I thought, well, heck, I'll put the syndicated strips I'm working on that I'm going to submit to syndicates, I'll put them online as well, because if I'm part of this web ring and I know editors are hitting the web ring, maybe they'll see my cartoon and I won't have to submit it. They'll just email me. Yeah. And so it never occurred to me to put it up because that was going to be the medium or the final form. No, it was a way for traditional publishers to notice me. Yeah. And it's so funny because I talk to my kids about this every now and again. We'll get into these conversations and I try to explain message boards and forums. You know, the closest that we've got today is Discord, which is very much kind of a one-to-one, except it wasn't that you got invited to somebody's Discord so much as it was kind of like a central place where if you were following comics at all, you were on the Weisenheimer, because that's where all of these conversations were taking place. And there was kind of have to get invited. Yeah. Oh, is that right? I can't remember. Yeah. Because it had a password. It had a password. But they also had people that were coming in that were like not cartoonists, that were readers, for example. Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you could get a password, but it was also more, it wasn't, there was a whole lot of different voices there. And in the very, very early days, I was trying to explain the print versus web wars. And they were real. I mean, it sounds silly, but it was really a war going on, because in as much as some of those people that you were talking about were making websites, there was a whole lot more that were real solid newspaper cartoonists who were furious that this thing was happening on the web. People like you and me were giving it away for free, and we were causing the downfall of the whole thing. And a lot of very mean, this was pre-social media, all these things happened on the forums and the message boards, but a lot of really mean fights and arguments started between these two factions. Yeah, I'm not proud of that either, looking back on it now as an older man. Yeah, I mean, yes. I was young. I was young and I was hungry, and these guys were people I looked up to. Yeah, and I thought I had finally accomplished something, and was going to be welcomed in, and instead I was told that I was a problem, and so, I went ham. I went off on them, and then. There was an editorial cartoonist named Ted Rall. Yes, who went on some tirade. Yeah, Ted went on a tirade online about how we were all lying about making money. Yeah. First, it was that we were lying. We were all trust fund kids, which I wish. Yeah. And then, as if that would be an insult. If someone said you're a trust fund kid, I'm like, yeah, and I thank God, because I just get to draw. I don't have to worry about it. Well, he was, and then when it was like, it went from trust fund to you're not a cartoonist, you're just T-shirt salespeople. You're T-shirt vendors, right? And he demanded to see your tax forms at one point. Yeah, he did. I forgot about that. Yeah, he wanted to see our tax returns. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We had him as a guest on Webcomics Weekly, and it's the one episode that I still can't listen to. Like, it makes me viscerally angry. It's the one episode I can't listen to. But then, then we decided it's not enough to fight with traditional cartoonists who don't like what we're doing. Let's fight amongst ourselves. Oh, it's always the next step, isn't it? Yeah. And so then you had at one point we had a cartoonist calling us snake oil salesmen too. And I know the word too. But yeah, it went along with, it'll come to me in a minute. Listen, here's what was said about us. How to make webcomics the book is the same as making a book called How to Make Bear Soup. And step one is kill a bear. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there's one other thing that happened that, as we find ourselves in this period of time, is really interesting, because go back to those early days. You're in the late 90s, early 2000. Keen Spot and Modern Tales are the first two pseudo syndicates that form, right? They take a look at the syndicate model and they try to recreate that online. And there was a time when that was the brass ring for people like me, particularly, to get invited onto Keen Spot. Right. And as the web developed and as the ad model developed, then we realized being part of this huge group isn't quite so much. It isn't quite so great. And it was the first time that people like us realized, I can kind of do this on my own, which now becomes a theme for the next 20 years, right? It goes into book publishing and everything else. I can do this on my own. So then we formed these smaller groups, right? Keen Spot, we broke off and became Blank Label Comics, which was a collaboration and a collective. Then it became Half Pixel. And then it was pretty much every person for himself.
So here's my question to you.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the early days of comics, we championed a lot in the early days of comics. Give your content away for free, monetize it on the back end. And now that monetizing it on the back end is not as lucrative or easy as it was, and everyone just expects content to be free, did we fulfill the prophecy that the print cartoonists said we would? Did we wreck everything?
Did we wreck it? Well, that's a good question. The first place I'm going to quibble a little bit is that giving your work away for free was always a marketing phrase. We always told people we're giving it away for free, but we were never giving it away for free because we were actually running an ad-based system.
That's true. We were,
So,
yeah.
When we say giving it away for free, that was something we told readers.
Yeah.
That was marketing. So we never gave it away for free. And in terms of it's harder to make the money on the back end, I might push back a little bit on that too, but because you have to remember, between Kickstarter and Patreon, which crested in the second part of the 20 years that we've been talking about this, it's actually never been easier to make money on the back end.
Think so?
I think so. Kickstarter, absolutely. And Patreon has revolutionized the way we think about this. Now, thanks to you, primarily, I'm on Substack and I'm seeing some real... it's the one platform that is really performing out of all of them. It's really, really amazing what they're doing. So between those three things, I would say that it's never been easier to make. But although I'm out of the game now. I'm out of the game, so it's hard for me to say now. But when I say easy, that's right. In terms of putting the pieces together. The one thing that has never been easy, and this goes all the way back to the early 1900s. The hard part is making a comic that people want to interact with. For one reason or another. And that's something that we saw happen when we did that first book together, How to Make Webcomics. When that book came out, we saw the 9-month rule. You remember the 9-month rule happened? Somebody would get our book, use it, and put a webcomic up. 9 months later, when they weren't famous, they would go out onto the web and say that we were all charlatans. We were full of bunk because they did. And every time we'd look at their comic and it was horrible. And I'm not going to say his name for fear of him showing up, but you know who I'm talking about.
The Russian cat?
Yes.
Yeah. What happened to that guy?
I have no idea. I literally am scared to say his name because
I don't even remember it.
Oh, I remember it. I'll tell you off the air, but it's like Beetlejuice. I don't want him to show up if we say his name 3 times. But he would go out on these rants about us on these same forums and message boards on how we were all snake oil salesman, and because he had been doing it for 9 months, and he would take the one I love. Dave Kellett did a sidebar where he said, the conventional wisdom is
It's 1%.
the 1% rule. About 1% of your readers are going to buy stuff. And he was like, hey, listen, I've got 10 readers, and one of them should be buying a t-shirt. And since that isn't happening, you guys are all liars. And
he would have he would make spreadsheets.
Yes. I mean,
he had a board at home with pictures and yarn.
He
did
with red string going between the index cards. Yep, like that guy from
and that's how
Sunny.
That's how Kellett is connected to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. I know it. I know he had something to do with it.
Yeah, but that's why I always get scared about talking about this kind of stuff where yes, I will argue it's never been easier to make the money on the back end. I'll also argue that it's just as hard today as it was 100 years ago to make a good comic. And maybe even harder, because let me bounce this off of you. What a good comic is today has changed a little bit. In other words, Mutt and Jeff ain't going to work today. There's a lot of newspaper comic strips, even I don't have to go back that far, that ain't going to work today because they relied on the captive audience of the newspaper comics page. So they could do a whole lot of stuff that a web cartoonist today trying to build an audience can't do. You cannot have a comic that's like a 4-panel humor comic that relies on you remembering a character's name right off the bat. That ain't going to happen.
I will say this, and I think this is really important for everyone listening to this podcast to hear. And I really, really, really hope you take a moment and let this sink in and just ruminate on it. Okay. Yeah. Don't miss the opportunity to enjoy where you're at now. Don't focus so much on where you want to go that you miss enjoying where you're at now.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, as a person who has breathed some rarefied air, I got a Harvey, I've got an Eisner, I've done really amazing creative things with some really amazing people. And at the end of the day, all that really sticks with me is the time I spent making the stuff that I love. And I love sharing it, and I love all the fun stuff that comes with it. But I wish I'd spent a little more time just enjoying where I was at that time, and not worrying so much about where I was going. The phrase that everyone loves is "move the needle." You know, I was nominated for an Eisner for my comic and lost because I was up against other comics that were way more deserving of it. Then I was nominated for an Eisner for my webcomic, and I won. And I won a Harvey, and those were wonderful nights, especially the Harvey, because you were there, Brad.
Yeah,
we had a really good time, and none of it means anything as far as moving a needle on my career. It didn't change a damn thing.
You woke up being the same person you were when you went to sleep that night.
Yeah, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. Of course, when my pants are on, I'm Eisner Award-winning cartoonist Scott Kurtz. But
they're the pants of an Eisner winner.
but that doesn't. Other than getting to say that, it really doesn't change anything, and it doesn't change how many comics you sell, and it doesn't change how good you are at making them, or anything like that. And don't underestimate the effect that your work is having on people, and it's the effect it's having on their lives and who you're reaching. And don't underestimate the effect that your work has on your life and your happiness. And just take a moment to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth and enjoy where you're at.
And with that, I'll say you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been Brad Geiger, the editor of Webcomics.com, and cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my close personal friend Scott Kurtz of the amazing Table Titans Club series of books.
Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Crichton at theworldrecord.net.
And this episode was edited by Matt Werder of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media. If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice, patreon.com/Comic Lab. Hold on a second. My brother just called me. It took over my headphones. Damn it.
No problem.
Hello. I'm on a podcast right now. Can I call you back?
I'd like to start my three-part apology by first saying I had no idea you're on a podcast.
Yeah, I know.
Secondly, I would like to say please call me back at your earliest convenience. And thirdly, it is in reference to Marvel Snap.
And if you could say hi to Brad for me.
Hi, Brad.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Brian. Brad, you want to know my process? I'll tell you my process. I sit here at this computer all day and I draw. And that's it. This house is a prison on the planet bullshit, and I never leave it. Yesterday, I went and got McDonald's for us just because it let me get out of the house. I took a drive. It was wonderful. Just the 10 minutes it took me to get to the Mickey D's and back. I saw trees.